Title: Standard Deviation, Introduction. Welcome to this comprehensive masterclass on standard deviation. In this in-depth session, we will explore the concept of standard deviation, which is a fundamental measure of risk and volatility in statistics and finance. Join us as we delve into the foundations of standard deviation, its calculation, interpretation, and application in various fields. We will also discuss its limitations and alternative measures of risk. Section 1, Understanding Standard Deviation. 1.1 Introduction to Standard Deviation, defining standard deviation and its importance in statistical analysis and finance, exploring its role in measuring variability and dispersion of data. 1.2 Variance and Standard Deviation Relationship, understanding the relationship between variance and standard deviation, calculating and interpreting variance as a precursor to standard deviation. Section 2, Calculation and Interpretation of Standard Deviation. 2.1 Population Standard Deviation, deriving the formula for population standard deviation. Step-by-step calculation of population standard deviation. 2.2 Sample standard deviation, differentiating between population and sample data. Adjusting the formula for sample standard deviation. 2.3 Interpretation of standard deviation, interpreting standard deviation as a measure of dispersion and volatility, comparing standard deviations across different datasets or populations. Section 3, Standard Deviation in Finance and Investments. 3.1 Risk and Volatility, understanding the relationship between standard deviation and risk in financial markets, interpreting standard deviation as a measure of volatility in investment returns. 3.2 Portfolio Risk and Diversification, exploring the impact of asset allocation and diversification on portfolio standard deviation, calculating the standard deviation of a portfolio considering asset correlations. 3.3 Standard Deviation as a risk measure, using standard deviation to assess the risk of individual securities and investment strategies, comparing and evaluating investment options based on their standard deviations. Section 4, Limitations and Alternatives to Standard Deviation. 4.1 Normal Distribution Assumption, understanding the assumption of normality underlying standard deviation calculations, recognizing the limitations when dealing with non-normal data distributions. 4.2 Alternative Risk Measures, exploring alternative risk measures, such as downside risk, semi-variance, and value at risk, VAR, comparing and contrasting these measures with standard deviation. 4.3 Beyond Standard Deviation, introduction to more advanced risk measures, such as conditional value at risk, CVR, and expected shortfall, understanding their applications and benefits in risk management. Section 5, Practical Applications of Standard Deviation. 5.1 Investment Decision Making, using standard deviation to assess the risk-return trade-off of investment opportunities, incorporating standard deviation into investment decision-making processes. 5.2 Risk Management and Portfolio Optimization, applying standard deviation in risk management strategies, such as setting stop-loss levels and implementing hedging techniques, utilizing standard deviation in portfolio optimization models to achieve desired risk levels. 5.3 Performance Evaluation and Comparison, evaluating investment performance using risk-adjusted metrics based on standard deviation, such as the Sharpe ratio and the Sortino ratio, comparing the risk-adjusted returns of different investment portfolios or strategies. Conclusion: congratulations on completing this comprehensive masterclass on standard deviation. You have gained a deep understanding of standard deviation as a measure of risk and volatility, its calculation and interpretation, and its applications in various fields, particularly in finance and investments. Remember to consider the limitations of standard deviation and explore alternative risk measures when necessary. Standard deviation is a powerful tool, but it should be used in conjunction with other risk measures and considerations in decision-making processes. Best of luck in your future endeavors involving standard deviation and risk analysis.